Hello everybody and welcome back. It's yet another episode. This is episode 12 of Gameable Audio and I am your host Kristoffer Schenström, and today on the episode we're going to talk about the Masters of VGM. This is the 2023 edition, and the thematic with this year's Masters of VGM is the theme of unsung and up-and-coming composers. So today I have actually brought forth three really good artists or composers that I really enjoy, and I tried to think about how many games they have been releasing over the time and what they're kind of doing at the same time. Maybe they haven't released a lot of soundtracks for video games specifically, or they have not really reached to the point where I would say they become more famous. But with that kind of said, I think it's way better to start listening to the music instead of me rambling gibberish, in my opinion, and I think you guys agree on that. So, we're starting out hot. I would say this is like a home run for me, because I'm just so into this soundtrack lately. Especially just going through and researching for this episode, who I wanted to pick, how they're going through and everything. I was listening to this full soundtrack like from non-stop basically, and I also bought the game, played it, and yeah, here we are. So we're starting out with Cityfiers, the 30XX theme, or not theme, but from the soundtrack. The song we specifically are going to listen to is the Circadian Groove from the Echo Cave Victory theme. Circadian Groove, the Echo Cave Victory theme from the game 30XX. And yeah, this is a shorter little track, but I can get to that specifically later. Let's actually go through a little bit here. So the music for this game was fully composed by the amazing American Cityfiers, or as his name is, Brandon Ellis. The game is currently in early access and is developed by the independent American developer Chris King, or Battle Staple Game, as he publishes games. So 30XX did have its initial release for early access back on the 17th of February 2021, and this was on PC, which is also still the case, as it still is in development. But I'm just super excited for this game because, first of all, I love the sequel 20XX, which also Cityfiers did work on the compositions for everything, and they packed so much more in the 30XX, and I'm just taken I'm swept off my feet. That's what I'm saying, and he just did an amazing job on this soundtrack as well, because everything is just vibing, it's super nice, and so on. But what I did enjoy specifically about this song, for listening to every other tune, it still have this vibe of chiptune, but specifically for the Circadian Groove here, when you really listen to it and you have the headphones on, for some reason, I do get a little bit of a vibe from a jazz or blues kind of style. Of course, it's a little bit more up-tempo, but it really has the swing inside of the melody, which I really do enjoy. And considering why the tracks for victory tunes are also smaller is because they are only played after you defeat the bosses within the game. So you still have a thematicism track from the level you were playing, and by the end of it, you just have this more laid-back style, like, oh, congratulations, you won. And it always has this more upbeat type of style. So it's really a good contrast towards the level you played, the boss battle you just had, and then you're going to select the next thing you're going up against. So for people who does not know much about 30XX, 30XX is like a Mega Man super homaged styled roguelite game. So you can basically play over and over again how much you ever want. And what they added also in 30XX, which I also have on my stream, is actually a level editor. So you can go in and actually create community levels. I started out with this. I've just started making this because I did purchase the game for this episode. I've had my eyes on this for such a long time because I really do love and adore 20XX. But when I was listening through the soundtrack and everything, I just couldn't keep it in my pocket anymore. I just had to have this game because the soundtrack is so freaking good. And for people does not want to buy this specific, we do have it on Spotify as well. So if you do have a Spotify account and you want to listen to the music, just go wild with it. So considering the composer here, so Brandon started out with music when he was quite young, actually. So already in his 3rd grade, he did win a songwriting competition with a song that he did program on his dad's keyboard. He did follow up with writing songs about the temples from the Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. He did produce a rap album heavily inspired by Star Fox and Super Mario 64. He did write sci-fi concept albums with his friends about space princesses, and did an introspective work about Ship's Challenge. Oh my god. And it's so much fun because it wasn't long ago since when I actually took up and talked about Ship's Challenge, and then you start reading upon composers and they make introspective work on Ship's Challenge, and I don't know why, but it just feels like the universe already knew I was picking him to some extent. And it's just so bananas. But anyway, continuing the story here for Brandon. So he did later graduate from Georgia State University with a bachelor's degree within music technology, and have since then been working and making music and sound effects for multiple games. Starting out with the Gridiron Heroes, I think it's like Gridian or something like that, but for me, when I'm reading it, it's Gridiron Heroes, except there's no space in Grid and Iron. For people that are in the US, most likely you will know I'm botching this, but for me as a Swedish who never heard about this this word ever, I'll just take it as it comes and goes. But Gridiron Heroes was an 8-bit football game which was first released on the 1st of November back in 2014. We have Bard of the Future, which was a side-scrolling cartoon platformer. Don't remember when that one was released because I did not add that one. But I will continue anyway, because dates are not the most important thing here, specifically when we're looking through this. The next game after that was Solstice Submarine, which was an adventure type of game where you're playing a submarine in space. And then Cat Lateral Damage, which I guess some of you guys might have heard of before. And I've never really tried and listened to the music from Cat Lateral Damage. But now when I notice Cityfires is working on, or Brandon, now I kind of need to listen to this soundtrack. So most likely after I release this episode, I've already listened to the soundtrack of this game just to see what it's all about. And of course I know the game. You're playing a cat, tossing shit over, having a good time. And then you have both of the 20XX and the 30XX. And finally, the last game or recent game that he has released, which is the Tectonica. And when it comes to this game, this is basically like a factory building type of game where you're on a planet, and it's kind of like one of those where you need to harvest minerals, and you put machines, and you have conveyor belts that just tosses all the items around. It seems a little bit comedic though, because you're having like what to say specifically. You're having like a cube that talks and says a lot of things. It was funny when I was looking through the trailer for this game, at least. So considering here for Brandon as well, he is working in-house at the studio Firehose Games, but he also does take commissions for work to work some extra for and on music. And of course, most likely it comes around when how much work and etc. he himself does have. But it's so nice to see somebody that still works in-house, but still also have some side hustle as well. You don't usually tend to see this. You usually see composers that are really just passionate about it and just keep working, maybe they're freelance or they're working in-house at some space. So I really like the background here for Brandon, and it's fun to see where he's going with everything as well. If he's going to continue like he does all the time right now, or if he has some other plan to go more freelance in the end instead of working in-house at a specific studio. I don't know at this point. Maybe I will see if I can get him in and we can talk a little bit more about his work and have him actually guest the podcast. That would be fucking amazing and super fun as well. So I'm excited. I'm totally excited. Definitely if I can get a chance to talk more about the 20XX and the 30XX soundtrack, because boom, they are slaying it. Next one up on this, because it's so much fun going through these composers. So the next one is going to be Vincent Rubinetti. I've been talking about him prior to this as well, going in a little bit deeper on his work and everything. But we're going to talk about another game that I have talked prior to this, which is the game Ink. I was talking about this when the podcast was in Swedish, so of course I will go through everything yet again. And the song we're going to listen to is the credits theme called Colors. And there we're fading out. Colors from the game Ink. This is the end credit theme by Vincent Rubinetti. So the soundtrack here was fully composed by the American Vincent Rubinetti. The game was developed by the sole American developer Zach Bell and was released under the name of Zach Bell Games. Ink here was released on May the 5th in 2015. And later that year were also released on both Mac and Linux. The game was also later ported to the PS4, the Xbox One back in 2017. Holy crap, I'm just losing numbers, sorry. And lastly, it was released also on the Nintendo Switch back in 2018. And yes, when it comes to the Ink is like a minimalistic kind of platform jumping type of game. And you're basically this really neat cube, and as you're jumping around, you're basically coloring the level. So in the beginning, you're having like this blank canvas. It could be black, it could be white. And there are some enemies in the scene, in some of the levels, and you have moving platforms and so on. But you're basically jumping around, like exploding in colors. Hence the word or the name of the game, Ink. And for me, this was like this really neat, simple, yet very effective type of game. The music is really more to the laid back type of vibe. It is really nice what Vincent did with his music. It still kind of have a good vibe in it, even though it's not a full-fledged rock-on type of vibe. The game is minimalistic, but the soundtrack is still putting a lot of can we say color? I think I'm going to say color to the game. And it just becomes a really neat little experience. In my opinion, Ink was a really great game. Simple yet very effective. It was fun to play and was very playful with the mechanics that it did utilize. You can still jump on walls and so on, so it kind of has a similarity to Super Meat Boy, for example, where you're jumping around having these hard levels, but with Ink it was a little bit simpler in my opinion. So really and highly recommend Ink as a smaller experience and yet very effective and fun to play. Considering the composer here, Vincent here, he has been working with making music in video games, videos, advertisements and ensemble pieces for over 10 years, serving as composer, producer, arranger, musician and more. And is not stopping there, he's also writing software. So it's just super neat to see this guy working on so many different levels and so on. he's been in the game for a long time, but as a gamer, there's not a lot of titles video game wise that he has worked on. Considering the names we find Inc. from 2015, High Noon Revolver, and then Hacky Sack back in 2017. And the last one, Hacky Sack here, was also developed by Zach Bell, but then under the name of Spaceboy Games. And it's just so much fun to see that even though he hasn't been working on video games, he has still worked efficiently with music. So considering Vincent here, he is still working with music, and it's more surrounding original content that he's creating, but he also makes covers out of video game music. So just 1 year ago, he actually released some orchestral covers from the Metroid music. I don't know specifically which game, but the symbol that I saw, and since I haven't played all of the games, but for me, I kind of was reminded a little bit of Super Metroid, and like most of the Nintendo games, I'm just guessing they kind of go back and reutilize a lot of music, but the symbol used for this track gave me more of a vibe towards the Prime series. So I really like this, and for me, considering Vincent, it is a really good composer. It's really fun to see how he kind of utilizes the music within the game, and for Inc. it worked really well. Since I haven't played either of the High Noon Revolver or Hacky Sack, I can't really give much thought to that one. But I really enjoy the music that it did give in Inc. And it shows a great, he has a great arsenal of utilizing, and considering the original music that it does have as well, I think it can just become a really, really good video game music composer. And yeah, I highly recommend everybody yet again, try this one out. Check out Vincent Rubinetti's music as well. And with that said, let's head into the last person of the week. We're going to listen to the end credits, yet again another end credits, but this one is a medley, so we're going to see a little bit more variety within this track specifically. But this track is from the game Flynn, Son of Crimson, and the composer here is Jakob Linke. And there we have it, the last track of the week. This was the end credits medley from the game Flynn, Son of Crimson. And this medley and also the full track was all composed by the amazing Swedish composer Jakob Linke. The game was developed by the American-based studio Thunderhorse, and the game was actually a Kickstarter-related release, as it did its initial release fully then on the 15th of September 2021, with full release on PC, PS4, Xbox One, and Nintendo Switch. And yes, I was actually one of the people who kickstarted this as well. I had my chance to also interview Jakob, and this was also connected to this game specifically, even before the Kickstarter. I started getting some notice of this game, and it just looked amazing. I really adore the 2D platforming type of games, and for people who have been listening to this podcast, surely understands why I kind of like it as well, because I know I tend to talk about it. But talking to Jacob about his work and listening through the tracks and everything was just really compelling. Most likely just to know where it comes from, and also how his mindset went into making the soundtrack for this game. He was discussing back and forth a lot with the developers to just see that they were getting the right edge and stuff for the soundtrack here. And for me, who kind of followed the whole design thing for the game as well, we even had availability to try the combat system, to just go around and just hack and slash. They made a lot of different changes within this game in beta and so on before actually finishing it in the end. So it was just really fun following through, and also having Jakob on my sideline to talk a little bit more about the music and everything. So for people who are getting into the podcast and this is the first episode, and also since I did that specific episode when he was visiting me and guesting the podcast, we did it in Swedish. So if you don't understand Swedish, I'm sorry, there's not going to be anything for you to listen to, but if you are a Swede or understand Swedish, then feel free to check out that episode. I highly recommend it to get to know Jacob a little bit more, and also dig a little bit deeper on what he did, where he got, and where he's going. But anyway, for people that does not know a lot about Jacob specifically, he is a composer and also a sound designer that really likes to explore and combine different genres. So checking out some of the releases that he has done. So this game is actually his latest release. But he started out back in 2014 with his first professional release when he worked on the soundtrack for the game Cloud Built. The game that kind of followed up after that is the game Move or Die, which was released back in 2016. After that one, we have the Frost Rune and also Super Cloud Built in 2017. And lastly, before we end up with Flynn, is Whispers of a Machine from 2019. Also a little bit extra as a fun fact, in the latest release of Killer Instinct, which was released back in 2014, Jacob actually sang in the Swedish choir for Spinal's track Warlord, which was created by Mick Gordon. So that was the smaller information that we have on Jacob, and I highly recommend for all these three composers that I've been talking to and about, Cityfires, Vincent Rubinetti, and Jacob Lenke. These guys, I believe they can go really far. They just need to find the correct projects and so on to cooperate with, and I really hope a lot of people dig into the music of these people, because they are amazing and they deserve all the credit. They just give them the credit. It's just amazing work they have done, and I believe if they can just get more work, they are going to be popular. No shadow of doubt, in my opinion. But when it comes to the game, Flynn, just so I had something said there. Flynn, I actually thought from the beginning it was going to be some sort of Metroidvania where you're walking around in a world, but no. You are actually going to play them level by level, just like a Super Mario game. But the game is still very adventurous, and you go back and forth on this overworld to interact with different people and to replay certain levels in order to collect everything, etc. But it's still a very fun platforming game, and you have some changes in different playstyles, because as Flynn, you have the power of Crimson, so you can basically conjure weapons. So you can have a sword, if I remember, it's axe, and then berserker gauntlets, which is like claws you can have. And you have a skill tree where you can add more points, you can have more HP, more damage, special abilities, and so on. So it's a fun kind of vibey game, but don't expect having some sort of Metroidvania with this game. It's just play level up by level, enjoy the music, enjoy the quirkiness and funness that this game gives. The harder part I think you can have with this game is the part with the combat. To me, I think that was a little bit on the lower end, but I still very much enjoyed it. So considering all the music we listened to today, which is really and highly recommended, even all these three games are games I would recommend overall as well. Fun, exciting, and to some extent, they're not super big games to complete one run in. I would say Ink is the smallest one. Flynn comes next, and considering 30XX, which is a roguelite, doesn't really have that much of an ending, not that I've noticed so far, but since it's an early access, it's hard to tell how much they thought about giving. But getting that first run done, if you just get the same or correct build-ups, you have a great potential to complete it in just a few runs as well. But yeah, that was the 3 composers that I have picked for the Masters of VGM 2023, the unsung and up-and-coming composers. So what I've been focused on today is, sure, people have been working for a long time, but since they've been so on the width, because it is harder today to work and be an in-house, because if an in-house composer is working at a game studio, they're usually releasing like one game, maybe 4 or 5 years, especially if they're indie. It takes a lot of time and effort to get into these. So considering people, or composers more specifically, they usually end up being freelance because they need to do way more work unless they have this in-house and a stable income. So they usually tend to go more freelance, it seems, and we're noticing that they're taking on multiple projects from time to time. You can see this from people that are just starting out, and you can also see this on people that are very all into the business already. So it's super fun to see. I really hope the best for these 3 because they are worth checking out, definitely. So with that said, I think it's time to just close this episode up. I hope you really enjoyed it, and you can find all the other episodes of Gameable Audio at our homepage, videospelsklubben.se. Also on Spotify or in your closest podcast app. Feel free to follow or comment, or even comment, I would say, on one of our social medias, either on Facebook or Instagram. Just search for Gameable Audio, and you'll find us there. It helps a lot. Just sending those likes for the episodes will help the algorithm for other people to find it. And also just giving those comments. Did you like the picks that I had for today's episode? Or do you have any other new composers that you haven't heard of? And just double check them. Have they been doing a lot of music before, or are they some new? I would love to get to know some new composers as well. If you are a composer and you haven't done a lot of work, reach out to me and we'll have a talk about whatever you have done so far, and we'll see where we go with that. Also, for people that want to support this podcast and for future content and quality upgrades, but also in the end for future composers, think about becoming a Patreon. So the awesome current backers that we do have today is Daniel Onemark, Lars Schenström, Titti Schenström, Kevin Wikström, and Mike Björkholm. Thank you so much for being such an amazing supporters to this podcast. Link to where you can either buy or support the composers we listen to this that were behind the music will be found in our main post at videospelsklubben.se. And considering the next episode, it's going to be a specific one, or a special one, I would say. Well, awfully specific as well, because we're getting Håkon Davidsson as a composer that will come and talk a little bit more about his work on the game Evil Wizard. And I'm just super stoked about this. I've been talking to him a little bit on Twitter, listened to the soundtrack, and yeah, I won't spoil anything, so I think it's just better for me to shut up at the moment. But yeah, we're going to talk about the OST for the new game Evil Wizard by Håkon Davidsson. So with that said, do take care everybody, and see you all guys next time.